Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this another Disability Awareness Week conversation. It's hosted by the Special Education Unit in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. Each year, Disability Awareness Week is observed in many different parts of the world during the first week of December. This year, however, it is being observed under the ministry's sub-theme, "You Cannot Pour from an Empty Cup. Wellness Strategies for Parents of Children with Disabilities." I'm your host, Hixwell Douglas, and my very special guest today is Dr. Tameka Stephenson-Harris, and she is a medical doctor, a nutritionist, a lecturer, and the coordinator of the Special Olympics Jamaica Health Athlete Program. Wow, that's a mouthful. She will be speaking to us today on the topic, optimizing the nutrition of parents and their children with disabilities. Welcome, Dr. Stephenson-Harris. Delighted to have you in studio with me today.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Douglas.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, Jack Weatherford once said something to the effect that even in this high-tech age, low-tech plants continue to be the key to good nutrition and health. Very, very important, Dr. Stephenson-Harris. And in the context of that, my first question to you is, what is the best advice that you would want to give to parents regarding optimizing their nutrition and that of their children during this very difficult period?
Well, that's a very important question, and yes, it's a difficult period, but I want to first say that there's not a one cap that fits all, and so this is just going to be some general guidelines and some routines that you can actually try to incorporate in terms of as parents into the daily activities as you try to nourish your child. Now, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, approximately 20% of persons with disability between ages 12 to 17 actually are noted to be obese.
Wow.
And this is comparable to the same age group of the general population in terms of that 15%. So we know that yes, obesity is on the rise, but you can see as it relates to persons with disability that it's even more so than other persons within the population. But another aspect of malnutrition that you want to look at is also those that are undernourished. So you talk about those that are underweight. And these two extremes are really critical even as I go forward in terms of how can you optimize their health. Because in optimizing the health is where you want now their BMI, which is the body mass index, to come within the normal range. But these persons have a few challenges. Persons with disabilities, we have a wide range of different types of disabilities, and so it is going to be in terms of the approach to these individuals. And so some of the general guidelines, and for example, if the person is obese or overweight, it may be secondary to maybe their underlying condition that actually slows down their metabolic rate, as well as it may be dependent on their mobility, their activity in terms of their ability to really be mobilized as it is with the general population. Also, it may be secondary to some of the medication that they're actually taking. So we have some of the side effects of some of the medication that may increase their appetite, they may eat more, and they may have increased body mass. But yet, you may also have the other extreme, whereas some persons, it may actually be secondary to the underlying condition, has a high metabolic rate, as well as some of the medication that those persons may be on that actually aids in them having weight loss. So we find that the challenge is very broad. So what can you actually do? The first tip is that I want to encourage you to eat from all the food groups. Now, why is this so important? When you do that, you actually are assisting yourself in optimizing that actual nutrition in terms of the macronutrients as well as the micronutrients. And so these are essential in terms of with these children, young adults, and adults in terms of being able to carry out their daily function with cell repairs, as well as just as it is with some persons who may have certain ailments on board. But not only that, when you think about persons with disabilities, some of them are not as active as we made mention of before. And so there's also the deficiency of vitamin D, which may be common among some of them as well. They're not able to go outside, interact with their peers as some other members of the population, as well as they may need assistance.
Especially those who may be bedridden
and those,
that sort of thing.
Correct, bedridden. And a colleague of mine, I was in clinic, and the child actually said she's very depressed because she has a disability, and she said she's very depressed because, you know, she has her friend, but the only thing she thinks she can do, and I use the word she thinks because I was trying to encourage her other things that she can do, is to talk to them on the phone because she's not able to walk up and down as they can. And so again, being, you know, dark-skinned person, hyperpigmentation, then you're not spending an adequate time outside with the sunlight in terms of the vitamin D, end up with certain deficiencies, end up with certain things like osteoporosis. So we encourage you, you can go on the outside, you can get some sunlight, also incorporate what we call, for example, even green leafy vegetables. Some persons are not even aware that we have calcium. The calcium content is high in some of these. They may think of only, for example, what we call the milk, the cow's milk, and not even consider some of these things. And so I want to encourage you, once you can incorporate from all the food groups, some of the times you may also need to see a nutritionist or a dietitian, again, because you may have been at either extreme, and so this interview would not be enough to suffice how it is that you can come in the healthy weight range in terms of your child and yourself. And so you may need some other individual tips as that person is then screened and assessed appropriately.
Based on what you have said here, it reminds me that a lot of our parents and the children may be under a lot of stressful situations during this time. What kind of nutrients, what kind of foods do you think would be appropriate to kind of mitigate the kind of stress situation that a lot of our parents and children are facing?
Right, so our parents and our children are stressed for various reasons. So the pandemic is on, but the pandemic also carries with it certain other things. The loss of jobs, so you find that certain finance has been cut, as well as some person's hours may be cut. And so they are not able to provide for the family like he or she used to, or both parents used to. The child, on the other hand, may be even stressed. I don't have a tablet. Some of them come to the clinic. I'm not able to join school. And some of them may be falling back. They felt like their last exam is not as well as they used to. And so these are some of the stressful things that they are going through. I mean, even others that had pre-existed before the COVID that they still have to deal with. And when you think about stress, you have to think about, for example, free radicals. These are some things that really are released. We have oxidative stress in the body, and so it increases your risk of aging. It's spontaneous in terms of the growth exponentially. And so when you think about some of these things, you also have, for example, the cortisol hormone that is released in stressful environment. And so we want to think about what it is that we can do. Now, some of the things that you can do outside of eating from all the food groups, we want to zoom in on some of the micronutrients and the minerals. So talk about, for example, your vitamin A, your vitamin C, you want to think about your vitamin E, these things that actually helps with cell repair, as well as the antioxidant property. They talk about your selenium, as well as, for example, your zinc. And these things, what they actually do, they helps to boost the immune system. They helps to remove the free radicals from within the body. And so that stress that you're going through, that predisposes you to other things and depresses the immune system and puts you at risk of certain illnesses, then you're actually trying to combat this. You're trying to neutralize this oxidative environment and the free radicals that has been released. And don't forget, while we're on the topic of nutrition, you don't want to forget your exercise. It also releases the endorphins, which actually helps you in feeling good and relaxed, and the stress that sometimes just by going and doing your morning exercise or your evening exercise actually helps to relieve you, prepares you for the day, and prepares you for the next morning, depending on when it is that you do it. And don't forget your hydration.
So tell me something, some everyday foods that people can eat to feel calm and relax, and sort of remove some of the pressures that they're feeling. Some Jamaicans talk about drinking different things and eating things with vitamin B and so on. Are there some everyday things that you would recommend that some of our parents can
Well,
use?
some of our everyday things that parents can use, you actually have, for example, your oranges, you have your cherries, and sometimes, I mean, I had a
Rich vitamin C.
rich in vitamin C.
Yes.
So you have these for your vitamin C properties. When you think about, for example, persons oftentimes eat cereal. So your fortified cereal, it does have the zinc, it does have the selenium, as well as, you know, the callaloo. Don't forget the callaloo.
Right. Good old callaloo.
The good old callaloo
Yes.
is also
Yes.
high in other minerals as well as even the vitamin C, but you have to enhance this. And how do you enhance the availability or the bioavailability of this iron that is in it? It's by actually eating it with, for example, meat, fish, or drinking it with a cup of orange juice, or eating an orange while you're having this. So these are some of the ways in which we can actually incorporate some of these added nutrients and minerals that actually helps with the stress. You know, when we talk about, for example, certain things that persons drink, we don't want to get too carried away as we even speak with our persons, as related to persons with disability who might be on medication. So some persons may readily want to speak about certain herbs and so forth that they may take in, but we also speak as scientists that, you know, some of these things we are not able to quantify, to tell you how much leaf, how much teaspoon, and so forth. And as well as we won't readily make this recommendation unless you have spoken to your physician, because there can also be drug interaction with some of these things that you are taking over the counter, purchasing or mixing. And so it is advised, if you think there is something that you may want to try, that you speak with your physician about it, so that they can be also look into what are some of the medication that this person is taking and how do they interact, so that we can actually, it's a part of optimizing your health. You don't want to include something that is going to actually not in terms of not benefit you, but more so be at a disadvantage without you even knowing. And when you come and you do your test at the hospital, you can't understand why it is that some of these things are not within the normal range, even though you maybe say that you're taking your medication. And some persons may actually put the medication aside and go with these things. And so we don't want you to do that. We want you to have a dialogue with your physician, and in the interim, as we said, your wide range of fruits and vegetables, those which you have available to you, readily available. We're not going to say that you have to go and buy no broccoli and so forth, but those that you readily have available, you can use it. We encourage you, you can purchase in bulk, you can purchase what is available. And so if it is that orange may be expensive, but you have a cherry tree on the outside, you can go with that. If you can plant some callaloo. I mean, I'm from Kingston and my father used to plant some callaloo in the back of the yard. So that which is convenient to you, you can also choose via colors as well, because by doing that, you are already incorporating a wide range of these minerals and vitamins.
Excellent. You know, I want to take you to a specific group within our population. There are children with autism, and they have some peculiarities when it comes to the whole business of food. How can parents try to ensure that their children have this balanced meal and that it does not compromise their health? What can parents do?
Children with autism?
Yes.
Well, this is very common. It's a common complaint, and approximately 76% of the parent, you know, complain of this same problem in terms of these extreme picky eaters. They have certain food aversion, they have their food preferences, and they can't get them to have anything else. It's a common complaint also at the clinic at UWI Hospital where I work, and you find that what we try to encourage persons to do is that though it is challenging, so they are faced with that difficulty, the child also has certain things going on. What can you do? You can actually try and help them to provide them with options. So oftentimes you know that we have a child who came to us who liked cheesies. And so you walk with the cheesies. And you always give him the cheesies because that is what he or she loves. Now what we encourage, you can have options. So instead of just giving a cheesies when the child wants something to eat, why don't you have a range of snacks that are available so that he or she can select? All right, that's one option. What is the other option? They have certain things that they like to eat. One of them I will choose in terms of one who shared with me that her child liked macaroni and cheese. And so this child will eat macaroni and cheese in the morning, in the midday, and the evening. What is the disadvantage? it is that they are at risk now at certain nutrient deficiencies that they are not actually able to consume within just this macaroni and cheese.
Yes.
So I encourage her, what you can actually do is to incorporate some meat. And how can you do this? You have to really put it in a small volume because remember, they are also acquainted with how that macaroni and cheese tastes. So you don't want to overpower it with if you're going to add piece of sardine or piece of chicken or whatever it is that you have available, or corned beef that you have available to you. So you're going to introduce small amounts and don't overpower it because you want to keep the consistency, because some of them has a preference for certain consistency, certain textures. Some may feel the food before they eat it, and so you want to ensure that you are trying to maintain the consistency, and you can incorporate like that. You can do the same thing, for example, with vegetable. So again, what about your carrot? The carrot kind of looks similar to the macaroni and cheese. So you may want to grate it. That's how you grate the cheese with the for them to have the macaroni and cheese. So these are some ways in which, and I know that it may take a while, because studies have actually shown that it takes up to 19 tries before a child will accept a new food. So while some persons may love it instantly as you have introduced it, for some it doesn't mean that he or she may never actually have that particular item, but you just have to repeatedly introduce it. And we also don't suggest that you incorporate multiple things all at once. You already have that difficulty, so I encourage you to try one food at a time. You could try one food per week.
And I'm sure you'd probably want to say to the parents, don't actually force them too much. Because that in itself, enough anxiety and all.
The anxiety, the fear, and the rejection for that particular food item. So once they see anything looking, feeling and smelling like that, they may actually reject it. So you want to have an understanding with that child, and as well as you may even need to assist with feeding that child. Some of them has varying levels of disability, and so you definitely don't want to force the child. Even somebody without disability, we encourage you not to force them to eat.
I think this highlights the big problem of the big difficulty with eating as it relates to a number of persons with disabilities. So is there any truth to the notion that some of the symptoms of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, big name, ADHD for sure, that some of those are affected by diet?
Okay, I just want to put it out there before I even answer that question, that diet doesn't cause attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It doesn't cause ADHD. In fact, it's not fully understood, but we do know that genetics has played a major role in the development of this, as well as certain environmental toxicity. But as it relates to this, one of the things in terms of with even persons with ADHD, sometimes what you may find is also that there may be a lower amount of what we call a particular hormone, the dopamine hormone. And of course, what you want to do now is certain foods that are high in terms of this dopamine, you may encourage them. I would like to encourage them to consume. And one such, for example, is even the zinc. It's so important, the zinc is, and coming back again, because it actually aids in the release of the dopamine in terms of the content. So increased dopamine release, as well as, so therefore you find that some of these other foods, for example, even from the other food groups, has some of these elements in terms of the selenium that is also very vital in terms of even your B12. Some of these that actually aids in terms of the neurotransmitters, certain things that are important in terms of the regulation of certain things in terms of at the level of the brain. And you definitely don't want to forget your amino acids, right? And the amino acids you get from, of course, your food from animals, especially the essential amino acids. And so what happens is, of course, with these persons who have certain food preference, you may find that they have certain deficiencies, but in terms of them having some of these and eating some of these, what you actually helps with is the neurotransmitters, increasing the dopamine release. And of course, I would also stress, these persons are very active, so they have a lot of endorphins that are being released as well, but these actually helps them to be calm and in terms of relaxation. And you want to have certain order and discipline and organized structure for them as well.
So what kind of food would you say we should try to avoid to reduce probably some of this hype and some of this energy. Anything that you'd want the parents to avoid?
Well, of course, you know, for example, food with your high sugar content and caffeine
sugar is a killer.
actually have you, you know, running and
Yes.
you know, some persons actually teach some of these younger ones as the go food because it keeps them on the go. But while they have their purposes, of course, everything in moderation, there are guidelines as to how much it is that is the recommended daily allowance. But of course, when you overdo any of these things, then actually you also have where persons operate at a different extreme. So you even have, for example, those persons that use certain food additives and colorings that actually can be very contributing in terms of those factors and the activities. And so you want to look at those. We encourage you to use food that has minimal food preservative if you have to at any particular time, and colors as well, because they can have certain effects. And as well as we talk about in terms of not just the caffeine, because sometimes persons, especially when we speak at the hospital, they may think, okay, it's just the Coca-Cola. We'll talk about even the coffee, and some of these children are, you know, getting the coffee, the chocolate, some of them are caffeinated as well. And so one of the big things that we'll go back to, it always has to do with reading your food labels.
Wow.
Very critical. So you can be able to, even with persons that have certain food preferences and aversion, you want to look and to see, what is it? Is it really the food in itself that he or she doesn't like, or how it is prepared, or what is added? Because sometimes, as you may share, a child may eat something at one home and don't eat it at another home. You want to look at how these things are being prepared as well.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we have had a marathon. A lot of information. And I just want to say to us, as I prepared for this session, I came across this thought that says that the food that we eat can either be the safest and most powerful form of medication, of medicine, or it can be, guess what, the slowest and most dangerous kind of poisons. In that context, I think that we have said a lot about the whole business of nutrition with Dr. Stephenson-Harris here today. I want to say thank you so much, Dr. Stephenson-Harris, for joining me and for sharing so eloquently in this conversation. It was, for me, a delight and a really great pleasure.
Thank you so much for the pleasure indeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, for more information on this and some of the other topics that we have shared, you can contact the Special Education Unit at telephone number 967-2312. That's 967-2312. Or you can contact the unit by email at specialedu@moey.gov.jm. I repeat that, specialedu@moey.gov.jm. Thanks for watching, and let's keep these conversations going until we meet again. Bye.